guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be reacting to
European Union versus the United States Army military comparison. Who would win? And this is as of 2017, so a little dated, but...
The world watched in wonder when in 1993 the European Union was officially formed. Questions abounded. Would the UK and France finally be able to live harmoniously in perpetuity? Would Germany and the rest of Europe finally form an unbreakable alliance? With a currency to rival that of the US and the combined military might of 28 different countries, the EU could easily be one of America's greatest trading partners or one of its most menacing foes. Although the American and European alliance is the strongest today than it's ever been, we thought it would be interesting to compare the military might of these two powerhouses and determine who would most likely win in a theoretical war in this episode of the infographic show.
Of the animations.
Why?
Because the American has like a laptop bag.
No, I understand they're different, but I just wonder why.
Yeah, I wonder, like, if that's the style they're trying to...
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, is that what they're trying to portray the style, or what?
The European Union versus the United States of America. Although money isn't everything, the first major difference worth pointing out is military spending. The annual defense budget of the European Union, which still includes the UK, even though they recently voted to Brexit, is $227 billion.
So is UK part of it or no?
Not anymore, it used to be.
Times smaller than the United States' annual defense budget of $664 billion. When it comes to manpower, the EU has a population.
Why do we spend so much? Who's attacking us?
Of 743 million people, with 1.4 million being active military personnel.
Now, it should be more because now we have like crises going on that has a U.S. involvement.
Yeah.
Because this is 2017.
1.7 million being reserve personnel. The United States has a population of 324 million people, with 1.4 million being active military personnel and 1.1 million being reserve personnel.
Wow, so basically half the population, but about the same military personnel active. Less reserve though.
With programs such as Sabre Strike, the 7th Army Training Command, and the Atlantic Resolve, it is safe to assume that the close connection between the US and the EU has resulted in reasonably similar training for the Army personnel of each country. In terms of land systems, the EU and the US are also similarly matched. The EU has 6,700 tanks, 48,971 AFPs, 2,312 SPGs, 3,492 towed artillery, and 1,069 MLRSs. The US, on the other hand, has a fleet of 8,848 tanks, 41,000 AFVs, 1,934 SPGs, 1,300 towed artillery, and 1,331 MLRSs.
Okay, so I think Europe takes a little, but we have more time. I don't know. It's roughly give or take.
Despite the US having a larger number of ground tanks, Germany makes one of the top-ranked tanks, the Leopard 2, which has been purchased in the hundreds by countries all over Europe. It should be noted that while the US has troops and missiles stationed in Europe, there are no European army bases in the US. This is an obvious advantage to the US, who could more easily bring the battle to European soil, keeping it away from the plants which manufacture American weapons, and again turning Europe into a war zone similar to World War II. Of the US missiles on European soil, the Aegis Ashore missile defense system, located in Romania, has recently gone online and is manned by 130 US sailors. This defense system is currently run by NATO, but in the case of a US-EU war, it would become an ideal base for the US on European soil. With regard to air power,
That's a
That
little.
would be scary.
That's a little speculating. Why would
That's scary. I don't want to
why?
see that.
Yeah, why would
want
the
to see
US
that.
and Europe fight?
There's no beef.
Yeah, I don't know.
the
No.
US currently has a larger and more modern air force with 13,444 aircraft, the most popular being the American-made F-16 Fighting Falcon. The EU has less than half that, with 6,751 total aircraft, the most popular being the Eurofighter Typhoon. Since the US and the European Union are on two different continents, it's important to take a look at each country's naval power. The EU has a total of 61 submarines, 102 frigates, 21 destroyers, 39 corvettes, 167 mine warfare craft, and 210 patrol craft. The United States.
Oh, that sounds like very little. Only 61 submarines. I can't imagine it would be more.
Those submarines are big, no?
But yeah,
Those are
but
big vessels.
let's see how much America. Maybe we don't have that many either.
On the other hand, has 75
Yeah, not a lot.
submarines, 6 frigates, 62 destroyers, 0 corvettes, 11 mine warfare craft, and 13 patrol craft.
Oh wow, we don't even. Way less. Way less.
I want to see what the Corvette is.
Well, we don't have none, so Huh, interesting. I kind of thought it would be more of that, huh? Okay.
The two seem pretty tied, however, the EU only has 8 aircraft carriers compared to the US's 19. In the unlikely scenario that nuclear weapons are used,
I don't know why he said tied. I think Europe takes advantage over this one.
You know
That's
why
not
I think
tied.
it's tied?
Why?
Because given the population size, like this is the amount that you have for
Oh.
your people.
I'm right in that case, yeah. The only thing we have more destroyers, unless that's like the best thing, and submarines. A couple. I don't know. Interesting.
the US has a stockpile of 6,800 nuclear warheads with 150 nuclear warheads located directly in Europe. Europe barely has 500 nuclear warheads of its own, split nearly evenly between the UK and France. As we all know, a major component of this military assessment is fuel, since almost every ground vehicle, aircraft, and naval unit
I wonder why Europe doesn't have a nuclear warheads at all. Well, they do, but not clearly near.
You know
as
what
much
I
as
think is like when you.
States.
That's why it's important to have alliance because then you don't have to do too much.
Well, of course, yeah, but in this hypothetical scenario, then alliance declares war on each other. That, you know,
needs fuel in order to operate. The European Union produces only 1.7
There's
million
no
barrels of
rational
oil a day
reason
no, they
to do
absolutely. I
so.
agree. There's no rational reason whatsoever.
and consumes almost 8 times that each day. It also has 5.6 billion barrels of oil in reserve. The United States produces 9 million barrels of oil a day and consumes 19 million barrels daily, though it has 37 billion barrels of oil in reserve. It is safe to say both countries would need to rely on importing oil from other countries. The EU and the US share most of their allies, and it would be very interesting to see who allies with whom. As many will point out, experience is also a major factor when assessing military prowess. The EU and the US have been involved in the same wars for the last decade. However, the US military exists as a unified entity, and the EU runs much of their military on a country-by-country basis, making communication and tactical planning much more complicated. When it comes to the all-seeing eyes from space,
True, and language is
Yeah.
different too. Like, different countries, troops speak different languages. That would make it a little more complicated.
And they take on different strategies too.
both the European Union and the United States run their own global navigation satellite systems. The US has GPS, and the EU has Galileo.
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 It used to have the capability to block civilian signals called selective availability. One of the main reasons the EU developed Galileo was due to its concern that the US could deny others access to GPS during political disagreements. The two came to a compromise, and the US is now in the process of replacing old GPS satellites with new ones that will not have selective availability enabled. So, who do you think would win the war, the US or the EU? Do you think there are factors we omitted that would make a difference? Is war between the EU and the US even a possibility? Let us know in the comment.
It's not a possibility. I don't
It's
see
not-
it
it's not
happening.
rational.
Yeah. Do you think there are factors that are omitted? I don't know.
I don't know. Russia would have to be severely convincing to one of the European countries for that to even be a thought.
I don't see it
I
ever
don't see
happen.
it.
But who I would think win? I would think the US wins for the fact because of the nuclear heads. I think there's just too many. They would overpower us. Drop it. But
And also that there's no presence of European base in the States,
yeah.
forcing that the fight take place in Europe.
Yeah, exactly. On their continent,
Yeah.
which is
That's quite costly.
and for Europe to kind of bring the war here, it would have to be via air, and well, American air is way more strong. I think.
The only thing I could think of
Let
is
me
like
see
for
there.
in terms of yes, U.S. have all these equipment, but all these equipment require gas,
and we
and
have
it's
more
limited.
gas.
But they still require import from other countries for gas because we use a lot.
Yeah, but we produce way more than they do also. And, but here, look how many. Oh wait, that's nuclear. Where the fuck is the air? Because I wanted to see the air.
And also in
There
the
you
U.S., they're very proud for people to join the military. Like that's like
Oh
something
yeah, I think that's the most.
never
yeah.
gonna stop.
Yeah, that's the most important factor.
And
I
in
think.
Europe, it's like kind of looked down upon. Maybe now things are changing, but in
Yeah.
U.S. for sure they take pride in military.
I think in
forces.
U.S. there will be a lot of people that will just
There's
go
always gonna
fight,
be
straight
people
up
to
fight,
come.
yeah.
There's people who will leave their job here to go
Mhm.
fight a war.
Yeah, whereas in Europe, I think people would be
Yeah.
less likely to do. Not every country, of course, but
But-
just overall, like the patriotism here, it's very, very.
But looking at things,
significant.
there's no rational.
Yeah, it's
reason
not
for
gonna
it to
happen.
be a
Just
fight.
an interesting video.
Guys, of course, let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join the Discord. And share as much kindness as possible.